Today we're going to talk about how to put together a relatively cheap spray setup so that you don't have to use paint cans all the time. Because we all know that paint cans don't give this high quality finish as proper guns and stuff like that. So the first thing you're going to need is a compressor. I'm sure most of you already have a compressor, but maybe some of you don't. When you're picking a compressor, you need to think about what you're going to be doing. If you're just going to be airbrushing, then you can get away with a really small compressor. Sometimes you don't even need a tank for that. I think it's always better to have a tank, but you don't necessarily need one if you're just airbrushing. Whereas if you're using paint guns, then you're going to need a bigger compressor with a tank. Your paint gun, when you buy it, will tell you what kind of cubic feet per minute it requires, the CFM rating on it. That's basically, it's not about pressure, it's about the volume of air that it needs to put out. So make sure you're getting a compressor that's suitable for that. You can get some really cheap ones at Canadian Tire or Home Depot, Newfie Speed and Sport, if you like calling Canadian Tire that, whatever. All those places carry compressors, and some of them are actually pretty cost effective. I don't recommend buying the rebuilt ones because my friend who works at Canadian Tire told me that they never last, but to each their own. I'm going to start off with the paint guns because I think more people are interested in using paint guns than airbrushing probably. So you've got your compressor. If you're using a paint gun, it should have a tank. The tank will collect moisture. Make sure you let the moisture out at the end, but if you have a compressor, you should figure out how to use it. Anyway, if you don't do that, you're going to get water going through your lines. Not good. So, paint guns. There are a huge range of paint guns in a variety of prices, all the way up to, if you're buying like Iwata and Seda, with the digital readouts, the RPs, stuff like that, you're looking at like $750 and up. But you don't necessarily need that, especially if you're not painting cars and stuff like that. If you're in Canada, one of these, this is a Mastercraft. This thing was like $40 at Canadian Tire. I'm sure there are several comparable units available. If you get one of these set up right, they work fine. It's a 1.4 millimeter nozzle. I actually use one of these for all of my clear coating, all of my 2K clears. I don't bother using a more expensive gun because this thing works perfect for it. Similarly, if you're going to Home Depot instead, or if you're in the States, this is a Campbell Hausfeld rather. Got this one at Home Depot. Here in Canada it was $70, something like that. Not bad, never had any problems with it. I've used this thing for lacquer, water-based stuff, all sorts of different paint jobs. I believe it is also a 1.4 nozzle. It might be a 1.3. But once again, if you get it set up properly, you know how to do your needle, your fan, and your other adjustments there. There's no reason why one of these shouldn't work for you for pretty much everything, whether you're painting guitars. I painted a motorcycle with this thing. No problems. Now, if you're just looking at smaller projects, then you can get away with something more like this, minigun. Now, once again, these things come in a variety and a huge range of prices. Like, for example, the Seda Mini Jet is probably in the $500 range. This was $26. This is also, or no, this might have been a little more expensive, somewhere in the $30 range. This is a Mastercraft. I had a Power Fist one when I was first starting out that was $26. It's not great, but it's got a fan to it, and you can adjust the amount that's coming out, and you can, just like any other paint gun, you can have your air on without having paint coming out. So orders of magnitude better than a rattle can already, and very cheap. And when all said and done, if you're running one of these, you're going to probably spend less on paint than you would using rattle cans anyway. Now, this works fine for a lot of stuff, good for guitars and everything like that, but I really think if you're going to be spraying your own clear coat, a catalyzed clear, that you need to get something more like this, something a little bigger. This was only, like I said, $40, $45. There's no reason why you shouldn't get one of these if you're going to be spraying good clear coat, I mean, a gallon of catalyzed clear is going to be $170, so why not spend at least a little bit of money getting a gun that's going to work? This thing's just too small. This is probably maybe a 0.8 nozzle. You don't want to be trying to run a catalyzed clear through that. It's just not a good idea. But you can paint a guitar, put your acrylics or your urethanes on, even lacquers I've sprayed through these, no problems. You just need to know how to set them up. If you are worried about moisture in your lines, you can get a moisture trap. These things are, again, pretty cheap. And, well, basically they just pull the moisture out of your line at the last minute. You don't have to put it right next to your gun, but you can. You can just, if you've got your coupling set up properly, you can just snap it on there. Another thing you need to consider is a regulator. And a regulator is very important. The pressure at your gun, a gun will say what pressure it's supposed to use at the nozzle. The pressure at your gun is very important. If you are just using a small compressor, it's going to have a regulator on it probably, but you need to keep in mind that your pressure drops throughout the line. It even drops between the end of the gun and the tip, hence the guys who use the digital readouts, that's supposed to be closer to the tip, which is where they actually measure the pressure when they're giving you the specifications. So what you want, you can get away with using the one on the compressor if you're careful, but it's always better. These aren't very expensive. A lot of them actually come with the guns. Get yourself a pressure gauge, a regulator, and just snap or screw it onto the end of your gun and regulate your pressure right at the end. They're cheap. I think this one was one of the better ones actually. It was like $15 or something like that, but you can get them from $5 and up. And that'll really make a difference in how much you can control your gun, especially if you're changing your fan pattern. Every time you change the width of that fan, it's going to modify how much pressure is coming out. So you need to be able to adjust accordingly. Now for airbrushing, if we're looking into cheap airbrushes, once again, that's something that can vary in price. A huge range. Anywhere from the little single action brushes that you can get at like Liquidation World for $10, $15, all the way up to the Iwata Custom Micron C Plus for $750 or something like that. If you're looking for a decent dual action airbrush, I found these, Iwata makes the Neo now. I think they were trying to keep people from using fake Iwatas, basically all the imitation brands, so they came out with these cheap ones. And they actually work great, honestly. I've got the gravity fed here. I bought these, the gravity fed and the siphon fed, 0.35 nozzle, and I believe 0.5 nozzle. This actually might be a 3.5 as well. And I figured that I would just use them for spraying large areas, stuff I didn't care about, or maybe when I was using paints that I didn't want to put through my other airbrushes. And as it turns out, I really like them. This one in particular, the gravity fed one, does a great job. I use it for spraying white quite a bit. So if you've got an airbrush setup going, like I said, you can use a smaller compressor, or of course you can run it off a larger compressor. In this case, it's even more important, I find, to regulate your air pressure. And you're going to use an airbrush hose. So what I like to do is take this is my regulator. It was about $35. It's much more reliable than the ones that I put on my guns because I'm checking those all the time, whereas this is at the end of the hose. I've actually put this on the end of the guns before as well, but I'm kind of a weakling, so carrying that around all the time, not so much fun. Anyway, I put that on, and then I hook up my airbrush hose to that. If you're going to airbrush, you need a hose. You can get them for pretty cheap. I got this one for $20, I think. And that's about it for those, really. If you're going to be using more than one airbrush, which makes it a lot easier to switch colors, believe me, you don't have to clean out your airbrush every time. If you're doing, for example, just a simple black and white portrait of some description, it's nice to have black and white, two different airbrushes so you can go back and forth. And if you're going to be switching back and forth, you can get these quick couplers, they're called. They're just like the coupling units for your standard 1/4 inch hose that I've got on my air guns and stuff like that, except they're for airbrushes. Quick connects. If you're not going to use something like that, then you have to unscrew it from your airbrush every time. It's a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. And that, once again, not very expensive considering what you're getting. You can get those for, I think, $14 or something like that. So all in all, depending on what compressor you get, or excluding the compressor, you can actually get a spray set up for everything other than your clear coat, including airbrushing. All this stuff for probably under $200. I forgot to mention, I think, the Iwata Neos, they were $60, which is extraordinarily cheap given the quality that you're getting. And honestly, that's pretty much all you need. Aside from that, just something to clean your brush with, or your airbrushes and your paint guns with. But you can do that with Q-tips and alcohol. So that's about it. That's how you get a spray setup for cheap. And hopefully that helps out, covers everything that you may need or want to have for that.